Okay, so the college football playoff just announced, and this is the issue I've had with expanding the playoffs. I'm kind of like the crazy old school guy. I've been for keeping the four teams in the college playoff because this is exactly why. Because here's the problem when you're debating Alabama, Miami, Notre Dame, Texas. They're all flawed resumes. Because that's the thing. They're just thinking who's going to be left out of the three. Because it was a foregone conclusion. It seemed like Alabama, Miami, Notre Dame, one of those teams is going to get left out. That was a foregone conclusion. And I'm thinking to myself, like, who should be left out of those three? And I'm thinking, like, none of those three teams really deserves to play for the conference championship. You look at the 4-team playoff, always kind of worked out with the exception of the last year of it. Florida State got left out. But even Florida State, they lost Travis. They lost their quarterback, so they weren't really the same team necessarily. The 4-team play, like, that's the best argument I heard for a 4-team playoff and not expanding it was most teams, if you look at college football in a year-in, year-out basis, there's usually four national title contenders, if you're honest with yourself. Like, I think most people would agree this year maybe there's a little bit more of a debate. Most people would agree Indiana, Ohio State, Georgia, probably one of those three teams is very likely to win it. I like Oklahoma. I like Oregon. But that's just the thing. I like those teams. Oklahoma and Oregon, they have their flaws too, even at Oklahoma number 8, Oregon number 6. But that's the thing. Indiana, Ohio State, Georgia, I think are the clear-cut. I think if you're for someone to say honestly, maybe Texas Tech is a good team too at number 4. But I think if you're honest with yourself, like if you follow college football closely, Indiana, Ohio, to puff your chest out and say definitively that one of those three teams, Indiana, Ohio State, or Georgia, is not going to win the national championship. For you to say that definitively, I think you'd be lying to yourself deep down. So that kind of would back up my point that I'm trying to make, that the 14 playoff, they should have stayed with the 14th playoff. Because it's like the argument. Colin Cowherd was talking about this too. And I haven't given him credit. There's always going to be, he didn't say this specifically, but he was talking about a reference to, like, they had a club for, like, billionaires, and they started letting in millionaires, and then they started letting more and more people in. You're like, hey, we should let this, that's maybe not the best analogy. The best argument I heard for not expanding the playoffs, it was a simple argument in the sense every resume, when you're debating between, I don't even know, what's Notre Dame ranked now? When you're debating between the 12, 13, 14 team, they're all flawed resumes. Like, people were arguing for Texas. Texas has lost 3 games. They lost to a bad Florida team. They lost to Ohio State, and people say, well, Ohio State's really good. Yeah, but that game was 14-7, but if you really watch, I don't want to sound hypocritical because I didn't watch that full game. I watched the extended highlights. But if you really followed that game, that really was, Ohio State was 14-0 in control of that game. Texas scored a touchdown late when it was really pretty much over. That was one of those 14-7 games where it's like, yeah, Ohio State was really in control the whole time. And then Texas lost. What was Texas? Why am I drawing a blank on their next loss? And to Georgia. They got really blown out by Georgia. I mean, it wasn't really, that's the thing. People, like, did Texas have a good, I think people get it confused. You can have, two things can be true. You can have a good season, but you cannot be a national title contender. I think both, that's what's interesting. I guess that you could play that into an argument for expanding the college football playoffs, but that's like, I think that's the thing that's a hard truth, I guess, to speak. I don't know. I'm having trouble articulating the best. I guess I'll reiterate it like I said. I think, yeah, people are having a hard time with both those things being true. You can be a good football team, you can have a good season, and you can be considered not a national title contender. I think Texas is a perfect example of that. Notre Dame had a fair argument, but Notre Dame started 0-2. It's like, you start 0-2. I mean, Notre Dame dug themselves a hole. I think, this goes back to, like, Greg McElroy made this point. Like, if you put Notre Dame in, does that just mean September's meaningless? Like, why even play games early on? So, but yeah, I think Alabama's flawed. So, yeah, the main point I'm trying to make is I would say, like, this would be a year where I think the 14 playoff would make a lot of sense, because I think Texas Tech, I think you would give Indiana would get an easier matchup, Texas Tech, Indiana. Indiana deserving of the number 1 seed. You get, Texas Tech, obviously not an easy out per se, but it'd be easier than them playing Ohio State or Georgia first round. And then, Georgia, Ohio State in the first round would be an awesome first round matchup. In the winner of that tough game, you say it's Ohio State gets to try to, avenge the loss to Indiana, or you get to see, Indiana, 13-0 Indiana versus the best team in the SEC. So I think this season, I think really backs up the 14 playoff. That was the issue. The final year of the college football playoff, happened to be, Florida State gets left out. Florida State getting left out really made the argument for expanding it. I don't think they should have gone to 12 though, but I would have stayed at 4. I actually said you go to 6 at the max, because then you can get the bye. I guess that was a few years ago when, there was an argument of, there's 5 Power 5 teams. Now, I guess with 6, that's the thing. With 6 teams, there would never have been a year of, like, strong, bitter argument or strong, fiery arguments. But yeah, I would stay with 4 teams, because, this year, Indiana, Ohio State, Georgia, I think those 3 teams are clear cut above the rest. And I think, like, if I had to put a percentage chance, I think there's probably like at least like a 95% chance. I would say 98% chance that Indiana, Ohio State, and Georgia it's going to be one of those 3 teams that wins it.